Welcome, Stumates, and welcome to this week's review of The Artist Way by Julia Cameron. We are talking about Chapter 2, which is Recovering a Sense of Identity. But let's do a quick recap of what we talked about last week with Chapter 1, which is building a strong foundation of safety. Having that foundation of an artist, as an artist, of being safe in yourself um, and confident in yourself to declare I'm an artist. So it's recognizing your inner monsters and champions and identifying the voices that discourage you and those that support your creativity, and learn to amplify the positive voices. Practice positive self-affirmations. Develop a habit of speaking kindly to yourself, using affirmations like, I'm a brilliant and successful artist. Tell yourself that every day, every time you walk by the mirror, whenever you're having a thought, say, no, I am a brilliant and successful artist and I'm creative. And great, embrace the creative process, not just the product. It's easy to get enamored with what you've created and think it's wonderful and great, but you have to remember to embrace the process that got you there. And you can see my notes keep popping in and out of the blurry background thing. Um, so focusing on the journey of creativity rather than just the end result, and encouraging you to explore and learn without judgment. It's okay to sit around and just draw circles. If that's all you feel like doing that day, do that. And continuously challenge and stretch yourself. Try new techniques, tools, and creative paths. And remember that once your mind is stretched, it can never return to its original state. So once you try something new, sorry, you got that knowledge. You can move forward with it, whether you like it or not. Um, all right, so chapter 2, recovering a sense of identity. I'll be honest, I have a tough time with this chapter, and this probably is the chapter that gets me stopped every time I've gone through this book before. But um, let's try to move forward with it anyway. So the first line of the chapter, trusting our creativity is a new behavior for many of us. Um, I believe that trusting your creativity. Um, Many of us have a tough time doing that, finding the trust uh, that what we're doing is worthwhile. Anything you're working on is going to be worthwhile. So yeah, it's a new behavior for us to just accept that we're making art. Um, the thing that came to my mind as I'm reading this chapter, um, and Cartmole talks about it in the book Creativity Inc. And we might have to be doing a book club on that book as well, because that book is amazing. Um, but he was at his daughter's elementary school art show and walking down the hallways, and I think his grades K through 5 in the book. And he was observing the levels of creativity from kindergartners through grade 5. And I experienced the same thing when I was working at Mississinawa Valley Schools as a visiting artist, working with grades 3 through 12. Um, the kindergartners have no editors or censors. They just like want to they just like draw and have fun, and they don't start censoring themselves or editing it. And they're very happy putting up something that looks not like a horse and calling it a horse. Um, and as they get older, as students get older, um, they start worrying about, the perception of, well, this doesn't quite look like a horse, or it's not as good as that person's horse, or whatever. Um, and for me, in this chapter, the whole thing is remembering that what it was like to create with pure energy and joy. And that's just an important part of the creative process. Um, if you're stuck, break out some finger paints and just finger paint. A lot of my paintings, I only use like large brushes and my fingers. It is so grounding to have that level of interaction with the product. And that's why I like drawing as well, is because there's that your hand is guiding the pencil, and it's making the marks. And it's just, there's this nice creative energy. Um, and it's easy to overthink it. Don't just let the creativity take over. Um, what else? So moving on in the chapter, she brings up a section called Poisonous Playmates, and I highlighted. Not surprisingly, the most poisonous playmates for us as recovering creatives are people whose creativity is still blocked. Our recovery threatens them. Um, luckily enough, I haven't run into a whole lot of poisonous playmates in my artistic career. I don't know if I just am very good or lucky at picking out people that are supportive and encouraging and creative and not trying to hold me back, or I just simply don't listen to people who are stuck in a place and trying to keep me from moving forward. I recently, excuse me, I recently reread the book Who Moved My Cheese? And one of the characters in this story is a poisonous playmate. They want to lock people into this current room and not move forward, even though the room no longer produces food. And they would rather starve to death than adventure out. And when other characters in the story are moving out, that character is trying to pull them back and keep them from going out and adventuring. As a poisonous playmate, I, like I said, either if I have them, I don't listen to them, or I just don't have them. So if you do have poisonous playmates who are discouraging you from moving forward with you wanting to be creative or moving forward with a new project or whatever, don't listen to them. Pretty simple. But it's easy to get caught up in their stories. Just view them like from chapter one, view them as monsters and not champions. Um, but the that whole section and this whole chapter, and I think that's where my problem with this chapter is, it's assuming you're a blocked creative. I don't think I've had creative block since I first started going down the art career path. Yeah, there are times where I'm not making stuff, and there are times where I'm thinking about what I want to make and am I running out of ideas. But I don't view that as blocked. So I think that's my problem with this chapter in general is I can't relate to being a blocked creative because once you've opened that tap in your head to be creative, it's kind of always on there, and you got stuff coming out of your head all the time with great ideas, and well, or not great ideas. Anyway, so poisonous playmates, if you do have them, just go back to chapter one and remember they're the monsters, and they are trying to keep you from moving forward, or in the case of Who Moved Your Cheese, um, finding cheese or making art. Um, Crazy makers. That's the next section in the chapter. They exist. We all know some. Crazy makers are those personalities that create storm centers. Um, Kind of like poisonous playmates. It's all about them and can you help them out? And it's all for them. Again, I don't have a lot of crazy playmakers in my world, or if I do, I kind of have them, I allow them in, but with a filter, I guess. I don't get too sucked up in the crazy making. Now, my wife will disagree because like she's like, "What about X person, Y person, Z person that you got working with, and it was all about them?" Yeah, but I know that going in. I know in my relationship with them that they are the crazy makers, and they get some access, but not full access. What do you think of the new background? I just thought I'd try being on the beach today. Um, ADHD moment. Um, Crazy makers break deals and destroy schedules. Yeah, if you make your own, as entrepreneurs, we make our own schedule. And if the crazy makers kept interfering with our schedule, we just kind of don't put them in our schedule anymore. Um, Skepticism, that's the next section in the chapter. Um, Now that we've talked about the barrier to recovery others can present, let's talk about the inner enemy we harbor ourselves. Um, it's easy to, and this goes back to the self-talk that we talked about last week. It's easy to start telling yourself stories um, that aren't necessarily positive. Um, her example is telling yourself, okay, so I started writing the morning pages and I seem more awake and alert in my life, but that's just a coincidence. If you're making changes in your life, things are going to happen. Um, so take credit for any changes you make. If you are doing morning pages and you're finding something happening in your life that's different, that isn't directly related to waking up early and doing your morning pages, if you're waking up and having more energy and getting a better start to the day and have a more positive attitude, that might be morning pages. Take credit for it. Um, One of the programs I went through last year is from a book called Positive Intelligence. Um, the author talks about starting your day with positive thoughts and like rather than the first thing you wake up, grabbing your phone and checking your texts and emails, which are probably going to piss you off at some point in time because like, what's this person emailing me about? Didn't they read my email? Or what do they want now? Um, Starting your day off with those type of thoughts kind of sets your path for the day that way. So if you do have to pick up your phone first thing in the morning, don't check texts, don't check emails, check something positive. I have a subscription to Blinkist, which is a 15 to 20-minute summary of books. And you can pick from their whole library of books. And that is how I start my day. It takes me a long time in the morning to get fully functional. So if I can get my brain working and cooking, why not have something positive going into it? Um, and my brain isn't fully functional when I first wake up to be sitting down and doing morning pages. That's more of an activity after I get up and shower and eat breakfast and all that stuff. Um, so anyway, take credit for changes in your life. Waking up and reading a Blinkist, when I do that in the morning, gotta say I'm more productive that day and happier than looking at texts and emails going, that's right, I gotta do that. Oh, I forgot about this. What do they want? Oh, crap, I gotta do that now. That's not always the best way to start the day. Um, yeah, again, the whole chapter is about in creative recovery, and I've never really felt I'm in creative recovery. And and as I'm going through this chapter and telling myself this story that I'm not in creative recovery, um, I do question myself, going, maybe I am, and I'm denying it. So I need to be paying attention to when I'm telling myself I don't need this because maybe I do, and it's telling me something that I'm in denial about. So I'm still processing that after going through this chapter. Is I keep reading it and rolling my eyes, going, I'm not in recovery, I'm not blah blah blah. But then part of me is like, but pay attention to this because there might be something there. She put it as chapter two for a reason, and I know that people always say that this book is good for getting over writer's block or creative block. And that's an important part of this chapter is after you've convinced yourself that you are an artist, um, getting over the hump of being creative. And like I said, I think I've been in this long enough. I have found ways to cattle prod myself into being creative, listen to the creative process, or not getting stuck. Um, yeah, so anyway, I'm still processing this. Maybe there's something for me in this chapter after all, but I'm having a tough time finding it. Um, the which leads me to a section I have highlighted near the end of the chapter. The reward for attention is always healing. Excuse me. So, going back to my thoughts of I don't need this chapter, um, and then part of me going, maybe you do. I mean, the reward for that attention is healing. So, there there something in my life that I am at a roadblock in? Now think about that. Yeah, got roadblocks. Yeah, trying to write a book and I'm letting other things take priority over writing that book. Is that a recovering creative? I'm gonna say no, but um, but it goes back to what I said. you minutes ago. Take credit for any change that you do make, especially the positive ones. Um, and I highlighted in here, it may be different for others, but pain is what it took to teach me to pay attention. That makes sense. Um, that that if you have pain about something and you pay attention to it, that's part of the recovery process. So if you are struggling or at a creative block and um, it has to reach a pain point for you to decide to pay attention and make a change. I mean, that's pretty common across all recovery programs, which is it has to be painful enough to pay attention. One of my favorite motivational speech stories is the salesman walking by a house, and there's a man on the porch and the dog every once in a while lifts up his head and howls. Oh! And the salesman on the sidewalk is talking to the guy on the porch, and they're going blah blah blah, and eventually the salesman goes, "Well, why does your dog keep moaning like that? Is he okay?" And the man's like, "Oh yeah, he's just sitting on a nail. It just doesn't hurt enough for him to move." So that one, for some reason, always resonates with me that when I am stuck in a moment of pain, I'm like, am I just being a dog howling, sitting on a nail, or it'd be easier just to get up and move away from the pain? Um, and so yeah, it's the whole it takes pit. Um, the pain is what it takes to teach you to pay attention. Um, So if your career isn't moving as fast, or you're stuck on a body of work, or you keep looking at a painting going, is it finished? What is the pain point for you to decide it hurts enough to pay attention to and get up and move? Or are you supposed to sit there and continue looking at this painting or thinking about a body of work that you're working on, and it's easier to be in pain about it than do something about it? So she lists at the end of the chapter a list of 10 rules of the road as a recovering creative. And it's a you're supposed to print this out and post it over your in your studio somewhere. In order to be an artist, I must, and she lists 10 things. Um, Only one of them really stuck with me or resonated. It is number 7. Choose companions who encourage me to do the work, not just talk about doing the work or why I'm not doing it. It's very easy for you to get a group of people together and sit around and complain. Um, Sometimes that's productive, and sometimes it is not. I keep thinking about Jackson Pollock and other artists sitting around in bars in the 1950s in New York complaining about the art scene and how no one's going to appreciate their work and it stirred them all up enough that finally he came up with his drip painting process. So sometimes there is a benefit for sitting around in a group and moaning and complaining and being the dog sitting on a nail. Um, but if that's all you have around you, it's easy to get stuck in that mode of complaining and howling on the porch about sitting on a nail instead of getting up and doing something about it. So choose companions. Sometimes you need someone who's you can sit around and just complain with, but you need to choose companions who encourage you to do the work. And that's what we're trying to do here is create a community where as a community we are here to help and encourage each other. Yeah, there's some moaning and complaining, but it's also a supportive community where if you just come into the group and say, I'm stuck with this, I just want to complain, it's okay to say, I just want to complain because everyone needs places to vent, but you also have to say, now let's do something about it. Um, when I worked in a 9 to 5 office and I had a team of people reporting to me, I learned this from somewhere, I forget where it was, but I'd always tell them, if you come to me with a complaint, also come to me with a solution. Just coming to complain, I'm not going to listen to you. But if you come to me and complain about something and have a solution, then we have something to talk about. Or come to me and complain saying, okay, we need to find a solution. Okay, we're there. And I've heard other examples where it's not just a solution. If you come to me to complain, you need to come with three different solutions. And he talks about that in Creativity Inc. Um, with pitching ideas, like if you go to the Brain Trust at Pixar to pitch an idea for a movie, you have to come with three pitches, different movies, because it's easy to get stuck in when you're creating one idea for a movie to get stuck in that is the golden child. But working through three different ones gets your brain thinking, and sometimes it's the third one that actually is the best idea, but it took you getting through the first two to get there. So, I guess bringing it back to this chapter, if you are stuck or recovering creative, um, have and you identify, it's painful enough that you've learned to pay attention. Pay attention to what the pain point is and come up with some solutions. Don't just complain about I'm stuck and I don't like uh cyan in my paintings anymore. Okay, don't use cyan anymore. You've identified the pain point. You don't like cyan. Move on. Don't do it. I know super simplified example, but you get the idea. Um, so for the tasks, she lists 10 tasks, writing samples. Um, two of them kind of stuck out at me. Number two, where does your time go? List your five major activities this week. How much time did you give to each one? Which were they, which were what you wanted to do and which were shoulds? How much of your time is spent helping others and ignoring your own desires? Ooh, that one hits. Um, and how have any of your blocked friends triggered doubts in you? Um, so for me, I have an accountability partner with somebody, and he's a very successful businessman, and he picked me to be his partner for this week, this month, and he has helped me so much in learning to block out my time. Um, he did most of the listening for me. It was the I was in pain about how my time management skills were horrible, and I tried different techniques. I mean, I have a task timer that I can say, okay, I can spend 10 minutes. If you can see 10, you can't see it on there. Anyway, there's a 10 minute timer, 30, 25, 15, and 3. Um, so if okay, I'm gonna spend 30 minutes and I'm gonna focus on this. And I was doing that a lot. I was being somewhat successful, but I realized I was becoming task driven. And through working with George about being accountability partner, I decided there are mountains, boulders, rocks, pebbles, and sand. And mountains are this is what I'm doing, big picture. This is where I'm headed. This is what I want to do. And then breaking that down into smaller and smaller pieces down to sand, which are individual tasks. Um, it was a painful process for me to go through, um, but I've been more calm this month, having come up with that system of where does my time go. I keep track of it in my handmade planner, in my handy composition book, which you can't see because it's invisible. There it is. Um, and I'm much more focused and calm and feel like I have more direction on where I'm headed. So anyway, keeping track of your time, it's kind of a good thing to do to know where your priorities are because it's so easy, especially like if you're neurodivergent and like me having ADHD, I get into what I call a sandstorm, which is I am so overwhelmed by the little individual tasks that I can't find focus. And I just wrote a blog post about that, about sand in your underwear. Like some days I just go, okay, today's a sand day. I have so much sand in my underwear, which is an accumulation of little unfinished tasks that are causing pressure and tension that I'm not making any progress because all I keep thinking about is all these things I need to do. So I declared a sand day, and I mentioned that to my accountability partner George, and he's like, "Make any progress is progress." That's a great one. Anytime you're making progress, you're making progress. That's good. Count that. Give yourself credit for that. He's like, but make sure the sand doesn't become quicksand. And that one hit because it's so easy for your time to get sucked up into chasing or getting stuck in quicksand. At least for me, don't know about you, but for me, that was something I was guilty of, and realizing when I was in quicksand and thrashing around even more only makes you sink faster. So using the escape mechanism that all survivalists talk about for quicksand, slow down and make slow, deliberate movements, and you can get yourself out of quicksand. Anyway, so for task number two, that one kind of hit with me of keeping track of your time. Where does it go? And list of five major activities for the week. One of the things I learned from George and George's mastermind group is um, if you get overwhelmed by the keeping track of things for the day, set your goals for each beginning of each week. So on Sunday night, sit down and go, these are the what I call boulders. What are the big things and that I'm going to work on this week and make sure that I spend time doing those. And then you fill in the gaps between the boulders with rocks, stones, pebbles, and sand. Um, I think that that horse is dead now. Schedule your time, keep track of it. And number four of her tasks list, um, write down two favorite things. Thank you, Adobe. Um, write down two favorite things you've avoided that could have been this week's goals. Remember, you're trying to win some autonomy with your time. Look for windows of time just for you and use them in small creative acts. Um, last Friday, last Friday, um, there is the sequential artist workshops out of Florida, and every Friday night they have an hour and a half Zoom led by a different comic artist, leading you through pretty much just working times. Like they give you an idea, an inspiration, and you just draw. It's a working session, and at the end of it, everyone shares their work. Um, I actually had time this Friday, so I I reserved a seat for it and sat there for an hour and a half just drawing based on the assignment of that week's lead artist. And his thing was blind contour drawings, which I love. I mean, I'm horrible at it, but I love them because it's the looking at something and drawing it without looking at the paper. And they just go horribly wonky. And they're just amazingly wonderful and great. If you haven't done it, anyway, I set time aside for myself and sat in for an hour and a half and just enjoyed drawing something that wasn't a project or a piece of art that I'm working towards making a final piece of work. It was just this simple act of sitting down and drawing and reconnecting with paper and pencil. Um, so it's also a great artist date. It's just saying I'm gonna set aside some time and it's gonna like go and do something for me with me. Um, so at the end of it, she has a check-in, and we'll wrap up this week's um discussion on that. How many days this week did you do morning pages? Me, four, I think. Um, and of course she says we're hoping for seven, remember? Yeah, I know. Morning pages, there's a morning every day, and if you're doing morning pages, you should be doing morning pages every day. Um, for me, four. Um, how was the experience for you? It's good. I'm really getting enjoying getting back into being more deliberate about my morning pages of just writing out my head. It used to be I sit down and make my task list for the day and kind of like pick up your phone first thing and checking emails and texts. The first time you sit down and start your day is building your list of tasks for the day. Kind of sets into a tone of um I don't know. It just sets a tone for it takes creativity out of the day. So morning pages gives you a chance to barf and purge and explore before you get into assigning yourself tasks for the day. At least for me. Um, describe morning pages. For example, they felt stupid. I just did that. So there. Anyway, that's chapter two of The Artist Way. I'm pulling in references from Creativity Inc., um, Who Moved My Cheese, and my accountability partner George through a mastermind of entrepreneurs. Um, so it's a stew. It is my stew, and I'm sharing my recipe with you, and hoping that maybe you'll find some ingredients you want to pull in together for your stew. Look forward to hearing your comments for how the artist way is going for you. What do you think of my my stewy rambles? And we'll see you next week as we go into chapter three, which is I haven't done my homework for chapter three yet. Um, Recovering a sense of power. Um, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, um, interested to hear your thoughts on Artist Way, how it's going for you, and if you have other artists who you think would benefit from being on Artist Stew, feel free to invite them to the group. And also, you can check out my Artist Stew Substack, which is timothywells.substack.com. That is my blog posts where I talk about things from the perspective of an artist, but it's about artists for artists, but also for the art community or people who like and support the arts, so they can understand what happens in the business and thoughts of an artist. So anyway, see you next week. Feel free to put stuff in the Facebook group and have a good stew week.